It began, as such stories often do, with a manuscript that should not have surfaced. Unearthed from a crumbling sub-basement beneath the old synagogue of Prague, the brittle folios, bound in blackened skin and inked with iron gall, bore no title, only a sigil that pulsed faintly when touched. The scribe had scrawled warnings in a mixture of Hebrew and medieval Latin, cautioning, "These are not myths, these are maps." Dr. Eli Sorensen, a semi-ietician turned Kabbalistic cryptologist, was the first to examine the manuscript in full. Funded by a shadowy historical institute operating out of Zurich, the Eternum Concord, Sorensen traveled to Prague with the intention of deciphering a list of ritual symbols believed to have belonged to Rabbi Judah Loew, the famed Maharal of Prague, alleged creator of the original Golem. But what Sorensen found wasn't a recipe for artificial life. It was a summoning. The symbols were arranged not in rows, but in spirals, concentric circles within circles, each representing a sephirot on the tree of life. But one sphere was added, one not found in any orthodox Kabbalistic diagram. It pulsed in black ink, Da'at ha-Sav, or the knowledge of the gathered. It was there the manuscript became more than text, it became an event. Within days of studying the sigil, Sorensen ceased responding to colleagues. His last known transmission, a voice message received at 3:33 a.m., was distorted and laced with static. A single Hebrew word repeated over and over. Tzimtzum, tzimtzum, a Kabbalistic concept denoting divine contraction to allow the existence of creation. Yet the voice did not sound fully human. It layered on itself like overlapping echoes from a cathedral made of bone. By the time his team arrived, Sorensen had vanished. But the apartment was not empty. The spirals were scrawled on the walls, etched into mirrors, burned into the ceiling with soot, and in the center of the floor a stone fragment lay. It was not from any building in Prague. It bore the unmistakable sandstone erosion marks of the Negev desert. Embedded in it were ancient Hebrew letters spelling, "He will rise, not as clay, but as memory." That same week, across Jerusalem's oldest cemetery, several graves were disturbed. Not desecrated, not looted, just opened. No signs of digging, no footprints, but the headstones had shifted positions, each rotated to face north. Security footage captured a figure moving between the rows at an impossible speed. Blurred, long-limbed, its eyes burned white through the grainy black and white. The footage was immediately confiscated. Back in Prague, something else stirred. Locals began whispering about the stone man in the alleys near the Jewish quarter. Eyewitness accounts conflicted wildly. Some said he was 10 feet tall and moved like smoke. Others swore they heard the rattling of dry clay. But all agreed on one thing. Wherever the figure passed, the clocks stopped for exactly 11 seconds, the same duration the human heart can stop before cell death begins. A group of mystics from Safed were summoned, keepers of oral traditions passed down since the Zohar's concealment. They carried with them scrolls written in charcoal ink on deerskin, guarded by generations. The leader, a blind man with no known birth certificate, declared the stone man to be not Golem, but something older, a failed angel, a shadow that fell into flesh before the breath of life reached it. As more occurrences manifested, a Dybbuk possession in Krakow where a child spoke in Enochian for 8 hours, a subterranean vibration beneath Mount Hermon. One truth became terrifyingly clear. These were not isolated events. They were linked. The manuscript was not a record, it was an activation sequence. Meanwhile, a Vatican archivist named Father Lucien Delacroix had gone missing from the Secretum. The only clue left behind was a torn page from the Sefer HaRazim, an ancient book of celestial magic, stained with something darker than blood. Scrawled across it in Latin, Veritas dormavit non mortua est. Truth has slept, but it is not dead. Those monitoring global occult anomalies reported identical runes appearing spontaneously on separate continents. Icelandic lava tubes, Navajo petroglyphs, ancient Korean dolmens. Each bore the same sigil as the Prague manuscript, and each location experienced mass blackouts as if light itself refused to witness what emerged. One surviving field researcher, who fled a cave site in Cappadocia, wrote a final line in his log before descending into catatonia. It was not a golem. It was a hollow made flesh, and it knew my name. As the Aeternum Concord scrambled to suppress the rising wave of unexplained phenomena, internal documents revealed their true objective: to locate the second vessel, an artifact referenced in the Book of Raziel and the Bahir, said to have been crafted in pre-Adamic times, before language, before form. It held the capacity to animate thought itself. It was not a container, it was a keyhole in the world. And now the echoes were growing louder. Old rabbis began sealing their homes with lines of kosher salt and black thread. Kabbalists whispered of the other tree, not the tree of life, but the one that grows downward into the void, where each sephira becomes an inversion, a distortion, and at its roots sleeps something that once tried to create its own world, failed, and grew mad. It is here that the Prague manuscript ends, not with a conclusion, but with a warning. Written in a script that pulses faintly under candlelight, do not finish the spiral. Do not name the ninth path. It will hear you. But one man has finished it. And tonight, under a moonless sky in a forgotten part of the Carpathians, a ritual begins again, one not seen since the floodwaters of the Nephilim drowned the first cities of men. The circle is drawn, the vessel is ready, the breath is stolen, and from beneath the cold stone, something opens its eyes. The golem rises not to serve, but to remember who first shaped it. Beneath the mountain monastery of Bistrita, in a sealed vault long hidden by crumbling frescoes of veiled seraphim, the stone floor bore fresh scratches, arcs and spirals dug with unnatural precision. The monks, silent since the 4th century, had vanished overnight, their quarters untouched, their food still warm. Only their chants remained, echoing without mouths, faint and phantasmal, intonating syllables that predated language itself. An international research team arrived 2 weeks later, guided by a fragmentary map discovered behind a false panel in the Vatican's secret archive. The map was traced in blood, its legend written in a dead dialect of Chaldean. Only one line was translated with confidence: where the golem rests, the gate waits. But the gate was not a door. It was a ritual, half written, half remembered, embedded in the land like a fracture in reality itself. The team's lead, Dr. Malik ibn Harun, was an excommunicated alchemist who'd once been affiliated with the Zoharic division of the Mossad, an elite unit dedicated to investigating mystical threats. He carried with him a shard of obsidian rumored to have been chipped from the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest of the First Temple. Its surface reflected not light, but memory, and in it Harun claimed to see the shape of what was rising. At 2:06 a.m. the vault opened on its own. The air pressure shifted. Cameras failed. Blood vessels burst in the eyes of those nearest the chamber. And from within came a sound like wet stone grinding against bone. They called it a golem. But the records from Prague had warned, "This is not the golem of clay, but of absence." It did not bear a name upon its forehead. It bore a void. Within 48 hours, reports of similar apparitions emerged from Lublin, Aleppo, and Toledo, cities once bastions of ancient Kabbalistic study, each occurrence marked by unnatural silence, stone ruins exuding an odor of old blood and myrrh, and symbols carved into the walls, mirrored versions of the Sephirat, inverted and fused. Witnesses described entities that flickered between dimensions, as if unfinished sketches escaping the parchment. A recovered rabbinic codex from Toledo, hidden since 1492, warned of a forgotten principle, Shem HaMeforash Ba'acher, the 73rd name of God, not holy but reversed, a name which unbinds form, allowing pure potentiality to twist back upon itself. It had been sealed in silence by the Bahai Shem mystics who burned their tongues rather than speak it. Now it had returned. The Dybbuks followed. No longer limited to folklore or isolated possessions, they manifested en masse. Not as spirits, but as intelligences seeking vessels. Flesh or stone mattered little. In a Romanian village, a man was found contorted in prayer beneath a centuries-old olive tree. His mouth whispered Aramaic invocations continuously, even after death. They tried sealing the corpse in lead. The whispering continued. An emergency conclave of mystical scholars was convened at Mount Athos under Orthodox authority, joined by Hasidic mystics and Coptic monks. They argued not about what was coming, but how long humanity had before the ritual completed itself. One scroll, kept hidden for generations, outlined the three unbindings: form, memory, and breath. Two had already occurred. In Jerusalem, the Kotel wept blood. Hundreds witnessed the crimson seep from between the stones, forming a single Hebrew character, Nun. The numerical value, 50, symbolized the final gate of understanding in Kabbalah, a gate never meant to be opened by man. The final gate was reserved for the angels who fell, and still the stone man walked. He was seen in Siberia, in the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, and beneath the pyramids of Saqqara. Each sighting accompanied by seismic anomalies and the sound of low, rhythmic chanting in voices that had never been human. Some said he grew larger with each sighting. Others claimed his eyes had become mirrors. Then came the artifacts. Ancient relics long thought to be myth were surfacing. Shards of the tablets of Enoch, black stones from the Urim Vetumim, fragments of the Book of Thoth. Each emitting harmonic frequencies when placed near the spiral symbols. Not music, not noise, but invitation. Governments were silenced, satellites were redirected, communication blackouts masked events. But among the occult underground, one phrase spread like wildfire: the clay is cracking. The final stage of the ritual, whispered in the Zohar's forbidden commentary, was drawing near. The breath of return, not the breath of life, but its antithesis. A cosmic inhalation that would pull the divine spark out of creation. A final scroll was recovered beneath the burned ruins of a French cathedral. It bore no date, no author, only the sigil, the spiral, and a single phrase written in blood. O shaped the golem, no longer controls it. It remembers its first maker, and in the shadow of the Carpathians the vessel now breathes. But it is not breath, it is the rustling of pages long sealed. Not words, but instructions. The spiral is nearly complete, and the final name has just been spoken. The last word is not an end, it is a beginning, rewritten in bone. The ritual was no longer theory. It was unfolding. Across the world, spirals appeared, not just carved or painted, but manifesting as patterns of decay, crop die-offs and collapsing infrastructure. Cities buckled at the same geometric fulcrums. Sinkholes opened in perfect spirals beneath Tel Aviv, Aleppo, and Cordova. Ancient strongholds of mystical traditions, revealing buried rooms not mapped, not built by human hands. The spaces breathed, the stones whispered. In one such chamber beneath Cordoba, archaeologists discovered a sealed arch inscribed with a phrase in Proto-Hebrew. Ze ein Guf, Ze ein Shem. This is not a body, this is not a name. The interior of the arch contained no statue, no idol. It held only a shroud, floating mid-air, unstained by dust or time. Instruments failed within 6 meters. A researcher who entered the radius returned, changed. He spoke with 2 voices. His shadow no longer matched his body. In Berlin, a forgotten vault beneath the Reichstag was accessed during renovations. Inside were boxes marked only with a broken menorah symbol. Historical records thought destroyed in World War II. Within the boxes, sketches of impossible architecture, diagrams of the Sephirot mirrored in reverse, and a single preserved photograph showing the stone man, half-formed, surrounded by Nazi occultists. The image bore a date, 1938. The implications shattered any assumption that the ritual was a modern phenomenon. This was not the first time it had begun, only the first time it had gotten this far. A Kabbalistic subtext hidden in the Bahir suggested that the Golem of Prague had not been the first, but the last successful interruption. A ritual designed to buy time, to delay the convergence of the breath, the form, and the memory. What had once been folklore now behaved like a contagion. Dybbuks no longer required victims, they spread through memory. A man in São Paulo began drawing spirals compulsively after viewing an online forum post discussing the Prague manuscript. He had never touched the original, but the shape alone had been enough. He died whispering phrases in a tongue linguists could not identify, though it bore a rhythmic structure as if it had been meant to be sung. Digital platforms attempted to censor the images. Every deletion seemed to provoke something deeper. Algorithms crashed, files self-replicated, encrypted images embedded themselves into unrelated data. One archivist remarked, "It's like the spiral wants to be remembered, like it's unfinished business from another age." Meanwhile, at a remote Kabbalistic enclave in the Atlas Mountains, 12 mystics gathered around an obsidian mirror, passing between them the staff of Azazel, an ancient relic believed to carry the burden of the scapegoat cast into the wilderness. When the staff was placed upon the mirror, the reflection showed not their faces but a cavernous abyss lined with thousands of unmoving forms: clay, stone, ash, forgotten shells. And behind them, breath. The enclave went silent. 3 days later, all communications ceased. Drones sent to investigate returned scorched. The air above the region shimmered unnaturally. Weather satellites began to show atmospheric fractures above key points on the Kabbalistic grid. Meteorologists called it spiritual interference. Others called it a thinning. In the Sinai Peninsula, beneath the ruined monastery of St. Catherine, explorers located a chamber lined with amulets of warding, each etched with permutations of the Tetragrammaton. One had been broken. Inside, a corpse seated in a lotus position, still warm, lips stitched shut with gold wire. It held a scroll bearing a phrase repeated 73 times, "Lo teshakrer Hashem," do not unbind the name. The stone man was now seen in daylight, not hidden in shadow, not flickering through the veil, but walking openly through a Siberian ghost town, pausing only to look toward the sun, as if recalibrating. His form had changed again, no longer human-shaped, his limbs elongated, fingers like roots, and on his back, sigils, burning, shifting, each one a forgotten permutation of the divine name. Global broadcasts began to fail at regular intervals, always at 3:33 a.m. Jerusalem time. During the blackouts, countless viewers reported identical dreams, being buried in clay, blind and motionless, as voices chanted above. Some awoke with soil beneath their fingernails. Others never awoke at all. The third unbinding was near. The signs were clear. An ancient Babylonian tablet found in a submerged temple at Eridu described the 3 winds of dissolution. First, the wind of form, crumbling bodies. Second, the wind of memory, lost tongues and reversed prayers. And finally, the wind of breath, described not as air, but as hollow fire, a heat that erases the soul and replaces it with intention without shape. Now, the Vatican's Black Codex, kept in a chamber miles beneath Castel Gandolfo, had activated itself. Its pages, blank for centuries, began to ink themselves. The writing, fluent in dozens of mystical languages, described a final conjunction, an ancient convergence known only as Zariel's moment, when the tree of life would cast a shadow longer than creation. And so the final signs align. The spirals deepen, the stone man learns, and in an abandoned temple beneath Mount Ararat, A breath waits to be drawn. But this time, it will not be God who breathes. The new creation begins not with Genesis, but with forgetting. The final spiral appeared beneath the Sea of Galilee, etched not into stone, but into the magnetic resonance of the water itself. Sonar scans revealed a massive pattern spanning 2 kilometers wide, visible only in the interference patterns between waves and wind. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Beneath it, ancient basalt structures, older than any known Canaanite settlement, began to crack. The lake, once silent, now hummed in a low frequency audible only to those who'd already dreamed the spot. In Jerusalem, the western wall split. Not from earthquake or erosion, but from within. No rubble fell, no tourists screamed. The gap formed with surgical precision, revealing a hidden tunnel that had not been part of any architectural record. The scrolls found inside, coated in golden dust and still warm to the touch, outlined a final syllable, lost since Babel, a sound never meant for breath, only for silence. When uttered, time shifted. Clocks failed. Cameras recorded nothing but static and humming. Dybbuks began no longer requiring hosts. They became geometries, infecting buildings, systems, speech patterns. Language itself fractured. Entire communities began to stutter, speak backward, or default to tongues they had never learned. Sumerian, Akalawan, Giaze, Akkadian. The spiral wasn't just reappearing, it was rewriting. Global institutions collapsed in secrecy. The Aeternum Concord disappeared after sending a final transmission, a set of coordinates, a countdown, and a phrase spoken in trembling Latin. The golem was only the echo. The origin is awake. At the location, deep in the Siberian wilderness, no building remained, only a crater, filled with salt and a figure kneeling in the center, hands pressed into the earth, mouthing syllables that cracked the ice around it. Now, every culture's myths began bleeding into one another. Chinese guardians became indistinguishable from Mesopotamian Apalu. Norse Seder magic echoed the rituals of the Book of Raziel. It became clear that the boundaries of religious tradition had only ever been masks of facets of a deeper, older architecture hidden beneath belief. The spiral was not a symbol, it was a fingerprint. In a remote monastery in Ethiopia, a boy began levitating during prayer, not as miracle but as inversion. His body curled into the spiral, his skin split open to reveal glyphs pulsing beneath the flesh. His final words, "The 9th path is not on the tree, it is the root, the inversion, the mouth below." Moments later, the ceiling of the monastery liquefied into black ink and fell in silence. The stone man had finished his journey. He stood now in the Negev desert atop the ruins of an altar once buried beneath a lost temple of pre-Abrahamic fire worshippers. Lightning did not strike. Fire did not fall. Instead, a circle of air around him shimmered, heatless, windless. The sand crystallized beneath his feet. His arms were now elongated into branches of glowing script, each finger a broken commandment. His chest bore a cavity, not empty, but waiting. The final stage had begun. Around the world, the remaining watchers prepared for Zariel's moment. Ancient sects convened for the first time in recorded history. Egyptian Hermetics, Siberian Dreamwalkers, Japanese Yamabushi, Judaic Kabbalists, Babylonian bloodline mystics. But none of them brought weapons. They brought names. Hundreds of them. They read them aloud, one by one. Some names burned in the air, others wept, a few laughed, but none stopped the awakening. In a cavern beneath Mount Kailash, a chamber long guarded by silence finally split open. Inside was no relic, no divine artifact, only a mirror. Polished obsidian, flawless, ancient. Those who looked into it saw only themselves, smiling, then screaming, then gone. The mirror showed not reflections but returns, as if something on the other side was learning how to mimic us. The sky cracked. Not metaphorically, not poetically. The stars bent. Telescopes recorded gravitational irregularities consistent with a local fold in space-time. A tear, small but growing, centered precisely above Jerusalem. Light poured in, not bright but hungry, black fire that illuminated nothing but moved with intention. It wasn't coming from the heavens. It was falling upward, as though Earth itself was exhaling something that didn't belong. Then the spiral opened in the flesh. People across the globe bore marks on their skin, first as bruises, then burns, then inked scars forming spirals without contact. Some wept uncontrollably, others tore their eyes out. A few walked into the sea and were never seen again. Those who endured reported visions of the original city, a place not built by hands but by word, echoing with the breath of beings that had no form until we tried to name them. And now the spiral has reached its center. The manuscripts have fallen silent. The watchers have vanished. Only the stone man remains, no longer made of clay or memory, but of intention. He raises one arm to the sky. He does not speak. He unwrites. And the breath drawn now is not ours. The final breath is not exhaled, it is devoured,